structure, and it is complex, made up of not just hallways, stairs, chambers, and secrets, but instead dozens of variations of each. Today, I'll be passing on the weird places these things tend to spawn, and boy are they weird, to instead do something even the wiki hasn't done right now, showing you every single room and every single secret contained within the trial chambers. This took some real doing, but please do subscribe if you like it, although I must start with the disclaimer that this video is correct as of November 2023. However, it is likely that rooms and spawner types will be added, and some of the rooms shown here will be upgraded or removed by the final version of this update. Keep that in mind when you see some of the more useful secrets which you'll definitely want to use, as well as some of the weirder secrets which make you question why Mojang would even put a room in the game that looks like this to begin with. Anyway, this is going to be the second of the 3 parts. We'll also talk about the key that ties it all in together, but first, before any of that, there are 11 different enemies you can find in the trial chamber. However, you'll only ever find up to 4 in a given one, and one of those will always be the breeze. The other 3 are selected randomly from these 3 categories. There is melee, ranged, and small melee, and this means that there are hundreds of different combinations of trial chamber spawners alone, which means every experience is different, and some are much harder than others. For example, the ranged category, you always get one of these, can either be bone blocks surrounding a trial spawner to represent skeletons, or it can be ice blocks to represent the stray, or even worse, you can have some mushrooms around there representing a skeleton which shoots poison arrows. Given the model of this is kind of janky, I assume this will eventually be its own mob, but still very scary in its current form. Meanwhile, in the melee camp, the zombie has been much easier for me than the slime, and the husk is significantly rarer than either, so when you see sandstone around your trial spawner, you know you've got something special. Then finally, there is the small melee category, which has the spider and cave spider you'll recognize from the cobwebs above the spawner, as well as the mixture of cobblestone and mossy cobblestone, which results in a baby zombie spawner. This is the absolute worst thing Mojang has ever done. And then there is just one more in the small melee camp, which seems to be the silverfish spawner. This is officially on the list, but after loading up 30 or 40 trial chambers, I have yet to find a single one, so either it's not correctly implemented yet, or it's incredibly rare. Take that as you will. And so if you don't like the baby zombies or skeletons with poison arrows in your trial chambers, you'll have to find an entirely new one, because otherwise they will show up room after room after room. But speaking of those rooms, let's go through them all now. When looking at a trial chamber from afar, it can seem like an incredibly complex structure, but ultimately it is made up of rooms from just 3 categories: the chambers themselves, and then hallways and staircases to connect them all together, because otherwise you'd go from challenge to challenge to challenge. And so let's explain precisely what all of these staircases look like. The first type of staircase is something you'll recognize if you've ever been to a stronghold, because it looks a lot like the stronghold staircase, except made out of copper. When these are double height, they'll have a big hole in the middle for you to climb down like a fireman's pole, and when they are single height, they'll have just a single block trapped in there, so you have to go all the way around to get down it. There is also the regular staircase, made up of just 3 rows of copper, as you can see like so, and then there is the double long version of the normal staircase, giving you 4 different variants of just simple kind of corridor staircases, which you'll find in your world. However, these aren't the only types of staircase rooms. The 5th type of staircase is also just 3 blocks wide, but encompasses an entire room. It might even be mistaken as a trial chamber itself. However, you can tell that it's not, because you'll never find a trial spawner in here, and so as a result, it is just a connected room between 2 places, and you can do so by taking these ladders on the sides of the room, or you can take the staircase right up and down. Then there is a 3-way staircase, a staircase that can connect 3 separate rooms. This looks like so, and ultimately doesn't really work as a staircase, because you just jump from you go up from one staircase down to another. Each of the rooms are on the same level, but there is a staircase taking these all down into one secret underwater room. This underwater room is actually 4 separate beds for you and 3 friends to sleep. If there's more than 3 of you, then, you know, one of you is going to have to leave the server or something, but still a very fun thing that will also give you a piece of loot which will help you survive in the game. In this case, 10 jacket potatoes and 26 bamboo planks is a pretty good deal. You won't find anything else in the water outside of this, besides sometimes glow squids, weirdly enough. But yeah, this water is mostly here so that you can appreciate the beauty of the beds hidden within, and I think this is a fun miniature secret you can find in a staircase already. Although getting out of this water is, it'll take some doing, I reckon. The 7th version of the stairs looks a lot like a hybrid of the last 2. It's got this big 3-wide staircase in the middle, but it kind of works in reverse. You have to go down it to go up the ladders to actually get out of the room. Very interesting. But also, this has some water in it. It's not deep enough to find any glow squids or beds. However, you might get lucky and find a chest in here, which is pretty darn great as a nice bonus as a stairway between rooms. The second type of structure you'll find in the trial chambers is the hallway. and this is your perfect bog standard hallway, the basic one. There is nothing notable about this room besides it has copper and oxidized copper and the occasional bulb along it. This is a hallway that just connects things without having any vertical incline. However, if we go down this staircase, at the end of it we'll find a much more interesting hallway that leads us out to some copper grates, and when they're oxidized they'll have a chest right in front of them. These copper grates will always have some deep slate behind them, which I think is a nice detail. This will be true even if the block behind it isn't meant to be deep slate. In the case of this, it's a super flat world we're testing on, and so there should be dirt back there, but you'll see cobbled deep slate spawn regardless, a fun touch in my opinion, as well as some bulbs if you really want to use those. However, the chest can contain some resources that will help you on your fight. These resources are due to change, but something I found interesting is that the chest doesn't spawn there if the grates are not oxidized, and so I have to say, this this hallway right here, the second variant, is not very great in my opinion. There is also a fourth variant of the corridor, which can go round corners like so, and this will lead to dead ends, but this one is likely to be patched out, as Mojang have said that these ending in dead ends is a bug. Assuming the previous corridor wasn't a mistake, there's also a fifth variant, which is much longer, and halfway down it we'll have a chest, which is very nice, ooh, some poison arrows, and a sixth variant, which connects 3 different rooms together, 1, 2, and then 3 over here. However, this also has a staircase within it, except the staircase only leads you to a small reward in the form of another barrel and 4 beds, but these 4 beds are always coloured, so clearly this is the better type of bedroom, and also you get a gold pickaxe in here sometimes. Wow, that's very handy, isn't it? So if you want a safe place to kind of securely wait between rooms, this is a great way to do that, although breezes will still go over there, so keep an eye out for that. Finally, we've got the whole reason that you come to this structure, and it is the trials themselves. These are recognisable because most of them have trial spawners, and therefore will be spawning mobs repeatedly at you, and almost all of them are dead-end rooms. There are exceptions to both of those rules, and the biggest one is this, which I have to point out, I felt uncomfortable saying wasn't a corridor. However, because it has trial spawners, and specifically is a room you can beat, even though it connects multiple rooms together, it kind of is a hybrid between the two, and it was referred to at Minecraft Live as a corridor, but you never find these without mobs in them, and you'll often find all sorts of loot down them, and even though they're a connective structure you find in most of the trial chambers, it is still, in my opinion, definitely a trial. The second trial that you're likely to find in every single structure is actually not one of these, because this is very nice, but the one that I showed you earlier with the vents. The secret bed that you find down here, and the vents that you find through it, are just 2 of the things that you'll find in this structure. You'll also find a tree here, and then 2 separate chests sitting in front of... how did you spawn that? You know, this is why you've got to scrape the iron, scrape the rust off as you go through, otherwise you're going to die to a skeleton, and no one wants that. Anyway, so the key thing that you'll find in this room are 2 separate chests, and then a 3rd chest, which you'll find just up over there, and then, if you really want to, there's a 4th chest, as I showed you before, alongside a coloured bed. That's right, no white peasant beds for us, we're sleeping good tonight, boys. Anyway, the important thing to say is this is the only trial chamber which will generate in every single structure. There is something very interesting about that and how it relates to the key, in my opinion, and it's also one of the very few trial chambers which has basically no downside. It is pure positive, giving you every single good thing that you could want from the trial chamber, from a tree to 4 sets of chests to a pure, safe place to actually kind of unwind and indeed keep yourself safe from every single mob in the game, mostly breezes included, not entirely all the time, and yeah, this is almost always found... What just died up there? This is almost always found in connection to a hallway trial chamber, which is the second variant, which might give you the false impression that these are easy structures to deal with, but boy could this not be further from the truth. There are so many other rooms filled with so many mobs, because instead of just finding the occasional trial spawner, you'll find multiple types all spawning together. Here is a trial chamber room with slimes, skeletons with poison arrows, as well as the fun breeze which will set off traps. By the way, any room with a breeze in seems to have dispensers on the sides, which is just a fun little detail, but this particular trial chamber is recognizable because in the center you'll always find a dispenser with a water bucket. This can be useful if you want to take the water bucket yourself, but also the thing that you'll notice about this room is there's 2 of these weird sides. If you're brave enough, one of these 2 sides can be entered, and there is some bonus loot on top of all you get for taking down the 3 trial spawners in here. It also kind of represents a fun way to stay safe from everything, but there is a full chest of loot that you can find in here. Less challenging, but more annoying, is the small melee room. These are recognizable because they'll have a lot of small melee spawners. In my case, we've got slimes here, which doesn't seem to be a very big deal to me. However, keep in mind that these rooms will have a lot of copper grates, and so baby zombies and spiders, and cave spiders too, will crawl underneath those vents in a way that you personally cannot. And yeah, this variant of the room right here is kind of a maze, honestly. There's lots of spawners all over the place that you've got to work your way through, and if you can do that, you'll find yourself a chest, which is well hidden over here. Again, this room really is like a bit of a spaghetti maze, even though it is quite simple and does have a couple of chests for you. To get around it really requires a lot of going around in weird ways, or you can just make a simple block right here, and you can save all of that work by going right along the top and just taking down one spawner, or blocking it up, or whatever you want to do. This is a really fun version of a trial chamber, in my opinion. There's also a variant of this exact same room, where things are slightly easier to come by. Here is the chest, right immediately got able to spawn, and also you can jump across here to get to the same zombie or melee spawner, and past the small melee spawner, which again is your worst nightmare, into the second chest. Actually, is the third chest here as well, or is that... Oh no, the third chest is replaced by one of these. I think I'm dead now. Oh no, I saved this. This is the fourth variant of the trial chambers, very fun as it may be. The fifth chamber you'll find in this structure is also incredibly common in my experience, and it's filled with ranged mobs and a lot of height. I like to call this the very vertical room, because despite having literal staircases, this is the room which covers the most height, and honestly has the most challenge, because even with skeletons, you're talking about 12 to 15 skeletons at a single time. You really have to hope that they fight each other so you don't die. But there, this is a very, very challenging room that is very rewarding in exchange. I mean, look at this. I don't really need to worry about anything else now. All my problems have gone away because I have an enchanted golden apple. But yeah, you will find a lot of enemies here. I think this is my 7th spawner over here. If you don't mind the risk of that and you want the rewards, it's totally worth it. But if you don't want to be in a pandemonium and you really think that even an enchanted golden apple should be enough to save you, then this is a place I would not recommend. Something I would recommend, if only because it's incredibly cool, is this hanging platform room. As you can see, there's these platforms hanging from the ceiling, and there's also a couple of spawners on the far wall. I like this a lot because they have these random copper grates, which you can use as a way to cleverly defend from the skeletons. There's a skeleton over there, but I just have to make sure he stays away, and the same is true for the breeze. All you've got to do is stop the line of sight being clear, and then the breeze won't be able to do anything, and you can finish him off instead in person. And I think that makes for some really fun design that makes you realize that just because you can see something, it doesn't mean that something can see you. Oh, and for what it's worth, this room seems to have an ungodly number of variants that I'm genuinely not sure I've counted correctly, but this exact same room does sometimes have extra chests, extra spawners, and extra places to hide if you want that. Although, personally, if you like hanging platforms, I think you'll like this room a lot more. It's one which has these hanging platforms very far above the spawners which are below, and as you can see, this represents a fun little game where you can just run in, grab your... Oh my god, so many diamonds! If you want to, or you can treat this as a much more serious encounter, and you can jump right down there, taking some real damage in the process, but then being able to have a similar room to the previous vibe, just with this sitting on top of it. And if you like that, you might like this next variant more, which has more platforms on it, although they seem to not always necessarily lead anywhere valuable, and also underneath it you'll find a bunch of powdered snow, which is fine for the strays you find down there, but for you might result in your first suffocation in a very serious situation. I personally do quite like this variant, but it's something to watch out for. Since if you do want to avoid the huge full damages, something fun that you can do is you can break this grate you'll find at the entrance, and you can climb right down there and only take 1 heart of full damage, which is a big difference, and then you can come in from this little secret staircase over here, which you might just prefer. Personally, I think it's a lot of fun that they have these grates to represent secret holes. You won't find that grate on this variant, but you'll be very pleased that there is a second chest, although a second spawner, if you so please. Since after looking more carefully, it looks like every variant of this thing either has a spawner with a chest or a spawner with a grate, which feels like a big trade-off in my opinion. I'd much rather have a chest than a grate now that I'm given the opportunity, but yeah, this room actually has 2 of those same grates, so there's one on this side, and then there's a second staircase over here. Presumably these are built to have more connections to other rooms, but it just feels kind of weird in the current form. Speaking of grates, you'll also find them on this small hallway variant, they seem like they just go from one place to another to hint that you should be over there, but what they're actually much better at hinting is that you'll find chests in these sections where there are grates. Oh no, it shouldn't have fallen down. Oh no, there's mobs down there. Anyway, this is the short hallway variant, and it's very, very bizarre for lots of different reasons in my opinion. But yeah, keep in mind that this is only being shown because I'm using it to link over to this weird variant of a room. It's kind of on a diagonal slope, and so we can call it the slope room, but it will sometimes spawn breezes. As a result, you've got to watch out for all of the fire charges and water buckets and everything else on the wall. There is also a third variant of this room, which is much smaller and therefore much more filled with mobs and death, and only one chest, sadly. But do keep in mind that despite the lack of different variants of this room, besides maybe some copper aging, you can enter it from different ways at different times with different chests, and so something very important to note is you won't always enter it from the same place with the same door, and yeah, I'm getting away right now. And this is true for every one of the rooms that I've showed up today. No matter how you think you're meant to get in there, there'll always be a different room which gets you in a different way, and so, oh yeah, this is terrifying. But regardless, right now, outside of subtle variations on the existing designs, you've now seen each of the major types. Like this one, for example, has a small kind of staircase you can stand up on. Does that make it its whole own room? I would argue in some ways no, but maybe you would argue in some ways yes. What about our small mobs room from before with the chest and then you got the staircase for a second chest? Is this room different if it has a grand staircase instead of